Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hello again, it's me, and I'm just here for another quick video for you. This is a bit of an inside job. So obviously, I've been a teacher now for 7 years. Two of them in Wembley, another one of them in London, and Peru, and Qatar, and all around England as well. So I thought I'd give you a bit of my expert knowledge, some kind of insider tips, almost things teachers don't want you to know. As a geography teacher to a geography student, there's things that we don't actually get to tell you. But now I'm not a teacher officially at the moment. I can kind of reveal the top secrets and kind of give you an inside edge that you can have on other people who maybe haven't seen this video. So the first one, it's not official, but the first one is differentiated marking. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, ultimately, people mark things differently. So teachers obviously have different marking strategies. Teacher A, teacher B, teacher C may all give a 9 mark answer, a slightly different mark. But there are things in place to stop that from happening. So there's like standardization, which is where obviously all the work is checked across by different teachers. So one teacher isn't giving their class the best grades and they don't deserve it. That being said, a 9 marker, when you get 7 or 8 out of 8, a 7 or 8 out of 9 isn't always a 7 or 8 out of 9. Let me explain. If, for example, student A writes me for their homework, they've had a good full week to write an answer for me. They've used their notes, they've used their books, they've used maybe the internet to help them. Then I, personally, and other teachers too, may give that mark not a 9, like an 8 out of 9, for example, or a 7 out of 9. Some of you guys watching this will recognise that and think, I've done a really good essay, 2 or 3 pages, and Mr. Murphy's given me an 8. And that's because, in a way, for a homework where you've had a full week to write about it, I'm reluctant, and teachers are reluctant to give a 9 for that. Now, when I say differentiated marking, another example could be when you write an exam 9 marker in exam conditions, teachers know you've only had 9 minutes or 10 minutes to write this answer, for example. Okay, so my point is, summarized here, a 9 marker in an exam doesn't have to be as good as a 9 marker that you have maybe outside of homework. So obviously I try to push my students a lot. Those of you that I've taught will know this. I've tried to push you and push you and push you and say that's an 8, 1 or 2 things off a 9. I'm very, very confident a lot of you would have got 9 out of 9 had you written those same answers in the exam. So my point is here, technically, it's not written down anywhere. I'm not trying to discourage you from doing the best 9 markers possible, but technically, in the exam, in the real thing, the markers will mark you less harsh. Okay? So we're trying to push you. Teachers don't tell you this, so you don't be lazy. We're trying to push you to write the best 9 markers possible. So in the exam, when you do that, it's easily a 9. But basically, point 1, long story short, differentiated marking, to get a 9 marker in the exam is easier than to get a 9 out of 9 for a homework. Okay, we hold you to a higher standard knowing you've had that time and you've had those notes. The second thing, I've mentioned this to you a few times, so it's less of a secret hack, less of a hidden secret. But teachers up and down the country sign up for marking. Okay, so teachers like myself, done this before, we sign up to AQA Marking, we get paid extra money for marking exams. Now, we don't mark the school you work at. That wouldn't work, that wouldn't be fair, you're not allowed to do that. But for example, when I did it, I marked random people. I have no idea what school they went to. Random students from Liverpool, Manchester, Wigan, Yorkshire, Devon, wherever. So whoever's marking your exam won't be your teacher, right? So what they're looking for isn't you to include the case studies you've studied. They won't even know that. Obviously, it's important that you do that. But when they're marking your answer, when they're reading your 6 marker or your 9 marker particularly, they're looking to see whether it's detailed, whether it's clear, or whether it's basic. So they'll read through the entire answer first. I know, I've done this. They'll read through your entire answer first and think, right, I'm not going to give that 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark. Oh, that's 4 marks. They don't mark like that. What they do is they read through the whole answer and think, right, what is that? Is that a basic answer? Is that a clear answer? Or is it a detailed answer? They'll establish that first, what band you're in. Band 1 is clear. Band 1 is basic. Band 2 is clear. Band 3 is detailed. And once they've worked out that, then they'll work out the mark within that band. For example, if I'm reading an essay, a 9 marker, and I think, yeah, this person's included lots of case study stuff, it's relevant, they've answered the question, they followed a clear structure, it's definitely a detailed answer, then I know I'm going to give that 9 marker 7, 8 or 9 out of 9. Okay? So it's like we mark it to level, not we mark it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks out of 6. We don't count the marks up. We mark it in levels. So bear that in mind when you're writing your 6 markers and 9 markers. The person marking that isn't going to say, oh, there's 1 mark there for the correct case study, there's 1 mark there for the correct definition. Instead, they're going to level it and think, right, what is this? Also, kind of second onto this, if you get a mark back and it's like you see it is 6 out of 9, then you know your teacher or marker has said that this is a clear essay. If you get, for example, 2 out of 6 in your 6 marker, you know you've written a basic answer. Okay? So, number 1, differentiated marking. Number 2 is about band marking. Number 3, making up stats. Now, I've been your age before. In a way, I can't really say this, but I'm going to. We've all done it. We've all forgotten a stat. Not sure how many deaths were in an earthquake. Not sure how many buildings were destroyed in a tropical storm. Do you make it up? Now, ultimately, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'd opt against it, okay? The reason being is you simply don't know who's marking your exam. So when I was marking exams for Liverpool as a case study. Now, I've never taught that. I've never studied that before. But ultimately, the person marking your work might have done. So it's a risk. Making up a stat is a risk. Now, if you're close to a stat, say for example, 783 people died and you put 782, you're not going to lose a mark for that. I don't know an examiner that would take marks off you. However, if you put 170,000 died and it's clearly wrong, more people are going to notice that. So in terms of my top tip number 3 is making up stats. I wouldn't do it. Try and remember as best you can. And if you really don't know, have a guess about it, what it might be, but certainly don't go in there not memorizing them. Certainly don't go in there making them up. It's not worth it, trust me. The next one is questions you shouldn't answer. So this one really is paper 1. Paper 2, paper 3, they apply less. Paper 2, I should say, sorry. Now, just a top tip from me. If you answer questions 4, 5, and 6 in paper 2, you're an idiot. Because your teacher would have told you, don't answer all of these questions, only answer the one you studied. So in the case of Arc Academy, question 6 is the one you would have been taught, answer that one. It says it on the front of the exam, it says it in the exam, and you'll be told by your teachers, you already have been from me, but you've been told by your teachers over and over and over and over and over again. So don't waste your time. Don't answer questions 4, 5, and 6 when only one of them is going to be marked. However, it is important to note that as an examiner, what I will be asked to do if I'm marking your paper or someone around the country is marking your paper, you do have to mark all 3 of them. So the reason we don't say to you do all 3 is because you're wasting your own time, but it will be marked. Say, for example, in question 4, if you get 3 marks and in question 6 you get 2, you'll get the 3 marks for question 4 because the person marking your paper doesn't know which one you've been taught. So you're not meant to answer them all 3, and definitely don't do that, by the way. Don't do that. I'm looking at you, don't do it. But an examiner has to mark everything you've done. You can't get marks for all 3. You get marks for the best one, but it is marked. But I'm not saying to do it because it really, really is a bad idea and such a waste of time. And the last one is capped marking. Okay, I've done a lot about marking, but it is important because it's how you get your grade effectively. So capped marking. It doesn't matter if I write the answer with all the notes in front of me and all my years experience. If I don't do certain things, if I don't tick off certain criteria, I cannot get full marks. Okay, so for example, if the question says use the figure and I don't use the figure, it doesn't matter what else I do, I cannot get over half marks. Okay, technically it's 4 out of, for a 9 marker, it'd be like 5 or 6 marks, very rarely. And if it's a 6 marker, it'd be like 4. You're capped at level 2. So obviously, I said about earlier about basic, clear and detailed. You're capped at clear. Doesn't matter how detailed your answer is. If you write every single stat and you remember every single stat, but you don't use the figure, or for example, in the question, you don't use your own understanding, you are capped. Okay? You cannot get more than a certain amount of marks. Let's say 4 out of 6 and 6 out of 9. You can't get more than that. Doesn't matter what you've written. So I've always said the most important thing is to read the question. That's because if you don't do what the question says, you can't get over a certain amount of marks. Doesn't matter what you write. Doesn't matter how good your revision is. If you haven't done what the question's asking you to do, you're stuck. So for example, you don't use the figure. If you don't use your own information, if this is the most common one, I did it myself before, I'm guilty. If there's a maths question, it says show your working, and you don't show your working. Geography has a lot of maths in there. If you just write the answer, even if you get it right, you cannot get 4 marks. That is literally giving marks away. And imagine if, say for example, there's a maths question, work out the answer and show your working, and you just give the answer because you had a calculator. And you lose an extra mark. You lose that mark because you didn't show your working, and then you're 1 mark off a grade 7. That can happen. That has happened before. That does happen. Don't be the one to do that. So very quickly, 30 seconds to summarize. Kind of hack number 1, there is differentiated marking. All your 9 markers won't be marked the same. And to be honest, the threshold for a 9 out of 9 in the exam is lower than it would be for a homework or a mock exam. Because teachers, mark you deliberately, harshly to get you higher. Number 2 is the level marking. So when your answer is marked, it's either basic, clear, or detailed. Number 3, making up stats, not a good idea. It's a bit of a risk, if I'm being honest. Number 4, questions you shouldn't answer or don't need to answer. They are marked, but you don't get marks for them if they're lower than the one you've been taught. So don't do it. Don't answer all 3 questions if on the exam it says just to answer one of them. And the last one is exam questions and marking is capped if you don't follow certain criteria. If it says use a figure, you have to use the figure, otherwise you're capped at 4 out of 6 or 6 out of 9. If it says you use your own information, it's the same. If you don't use a case study in a 9 marker, it's the same. It doesn't matter what you write or who writes it, you cannot get over a certain mark if you don't do those things. Any questions, please leave them in the comments. It's a bit of a complicated one, this one, so feel free to pause it, rewind it, watch it over and over again, but don't fall into these traps and use these top tips to get an edge on other people around you. These other people that are doing exams around the country might not know these things. We don't explicitly say them in the classroom. So there's a reason why I'm doing this video, to kind of give you a bit of an edge. It's been great to chat to you guys. I'll see you very soon for the next video. Okay, take care. Miss you all.